Gatorade Endurance conducted a survey designed to identify and understand the barriers minority athletes, including people of color, Black, LGBTQ plus, and disabled face when considering participation in endurance sports. Time is a key barrier to entering endurance sports, which was found in the Gatorade Endurance survey. This was driven by involvement in other activities, jobs, having demanding hours, schedules not aligning with training, facilities, timing, and would rather spend time with family and friends. Kionte, has time ever been a barrier for you when participating in endurance sports?
Oh, of course. Time is a big factor when it comes to training for any sports, but it's specifically endurance sports, because that's a big chunk of time when you're training for something that's, an hour-long run or 2-hour-long runs, or even planning out, longer and longer mileage. And so, when I was training for, a marathon or even my hiking or expeditions, I would have to think of days of planning, as well as when it even comes to training, what I needed to do, how I needed to attack that training, and think about what is needed for that expedition or even marathon type of training style. You don't want to sacrifice sleep if you're training for endurance. And so now sleep is a priority, work is priority, school is priority, all these little priorities you have to take into account. And that actually became the biggest burden, to where I actually had to take a step back and say, I can't keep doing this. Unfortunately, because I was now sacrificing sleep, and my well-being, my mental health came into effect. So I had to take a season off.
Kira, do you find it difficult to make time to participate in endurance sports?
I do. I think to the point that Kionte made, endurance sports take time. It's not a 45-minute chunk of the day, it's hours or it's days that you're looking at. And it's been a huge hurdle for me. I think, I even had to reconsider if in the priority of my life, this is something that I can keep doing and I love it. So I figured out how to make it work, but it's a huge challenge. So I've had to really consider how many races I take on per year, what the training schedule looks like, and also be very transparent with, those around me in terms of what they can expect from me during those times. I think we talk a lot about training in the mileage sense, at least when it comes to, running and maybe cycling as well. But there's so many other impacts to your mental health.
What about you, Chris? How do you find time to compete and to train, especially since it takes so much?
Yeah, it was mentioned seasons, right? So just as we plan like our athletic season of having a base period and then a peak period and then a recovery period, sort of how I plan out the seasons of my life as well. When I was training for the Olympic trials, that was fully focused. Top priority was on training, which meant that my work and some of my social relationships, they suffered a little bit because I didn't have the time to put full energy into all of those things. And then after that, I ended up injured, and that became a good sleeping period and social period where training took a back seat because I was recovering. So, I think that that's really how I plan it, with that understanding that I can't give 100% to all the areas of my life as much as I would love to. Something is going to, suffer.
Carolyn, how do you balance time, if you will?
I was just going to say that I think a lot of times we fail to factor in the amount of time it takes outside of the actual activity, the actual training when we are on the bike or on the road or what we're doing. We forget to factor in that recovery takes time, that all the cross training takes time. Even when we think about nutrition, like planning for grocery shopping, going to get the groceries, meal prep, all of that. And on top of that, your job and your social life, like everyone was saying, basically. But I think it's important that we can be as transparent as possible. So that way, for people who are thinking about the sport, that it's also not a abrupt wake up call, or it doesn't feel discouraging to people when they feel like, oh, I cannot do it all, because none of us actually can.
I want a quick hit from you, Kionte. What's a tip that you could give to people in terms of how to manage their time?
I would say to manage your time is think of it going backwards of what you need to do from the time that you need to say you need to be on the bike or you need to be on the road or whatever you need to do. Think of it going backwards. And that's how it's always worked for me as I understood how much time I needed to do something. Because if I think of, oh, I need to wake up and I need to do this and this and this, sometimes I forget that it takes an X amount of time to prep stuff getting into the car. It takes, maybe I need to get gas. So think of the time going backwards from the time, like, you need to get to the gym.
Got it. So think about things backwards. Kira?
Don't be afraid to ask for help. I would say whether that be from a loved one or whether that's getting your groceries delivered if you have, you're able to afford that luxury. I think the way that you can give yourself back time is incredible, and thankful for technology in terms of being able to help in a lot of those ways. But there are sadly only 24 hours. So focusing on the things that only you can do with your time has really helped me.
Live in the moment, understand what your opportunity is, work backwards, and ask for help. Those are the most important things, I think, in our takeaway. So thanks for joining us. Tune into GatoradeEndurance.com/community or on Instagram @Gatorade Endurance to see other barriers that athletes face and tips for how to overcome.